The Detroit Lions Super Bowl window isn't closing. It's about to explode. One analyst called Dan Campbell an absolute genius and says Detroit has too much blue-chip talent to fade. But with brutal NFC competition and health concerns looming, the real question is, can they finally finish the job?
I disagree with basically everything you just said, Myron.
I appreciate that.
So let's start here. I don't think that Dan Campbell is a game manager or a CEO or anything like that. I think it's the way he looks. He gets characterized sometimes as a guy who's a vibes guy or a toughness guy. He's a genius. He is an absolute genius. And I've sat down and I've talked to him and I said something, hey, you go for it on fourth down. Why? It's not some manly tough guy thing. It's because he worked for Sean Payton and he used to see the fear that the other sideline had when Sean Payton would not only go for it on fourth down, but he would take a shot. He would do a play action 40-yard bomb on fourth down and he'd say, I want to do that. Everything is thought out in Detroit. And then you add in the roster talent. Your window can't be closed with this many blue chip players. Two guys on the outside at receiver. Jared Goff, who I think is probably the most underrated quarterback in football. Jahmyr Gibbs, Aiden Hutchinson. Obviously, you lose Cade Mays, the center, to a wrist injury for a couple weeks. We'll see what happens there. But the offensive line is rebuilt. It's wide open. Yeah. It is wide open. And also, I also think that the whole conversation about Super Bowl windows is crazy. This time last year, you would have gotten laughed out of the building if you said the Seahawks Super Bowl window was open. You don't know until you see the talent on the field. We will see the talent on the field in September. Lions are real good this year.
But to say the window is closed in Detroit, to me, is sometimes how soon we forget. This team couldn't sniff a win 3 years ago, right? Like, they execute at a very high level still. They still are a team that is formidable for anybody that they play against. It comes down to what you said, though. It's about Jared Goff and health. Like, I think health derailed this team from having a chance to play for a Super Bowl as they got down the stretch with Aiden being out and trying to figure out guys are coming back. We were up there for a Monday night game where the whole secondary was hurt, and they competed against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the end. So I don't think that the window is closed. I think it's gotten harder. But I don't think their window is closed. I think when you step on the field with the Detroit Lions, whether you're the Minnesota Vikings or the Green Bay Packers, you better bring, or the Chicago Bears, you better bring your lunch pail. One, it is going to be physical. Sometimes physicality get misconstrued because it's not as explosive as we've grown accustomed to. They still were a physical football team last year. They still wanted to get after you up front. They suffered injuries. But these two pieces that I talked about with Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, if they are available, which is dicey, but if they are available, this team is square in the middle of the NFC and they gonna make some noise.
And I think we're having this conversation in part because of what we think of the division, right? We've all talked about this, but I do think we confuse this division a little bit with like a murderer's row. This ain't the NFC West. This ain't Seattle and Rams sitting in your division. And I agree, every team has a lot of potential. But there's a lot of question marks with the Bears, how they won a lot of games, the turnovers that they were able to force, the close games that you saw miraculous plays by Caleb Williams. Maybe not quite sustainable. Not saying they're going to take a big step back, but also the Packers, right? A lot of potential. They've had so many injuries around Jordan Love. I think there's equally question marks for all these other teams that were kind of just saying, yeah, but everybody's better, so I guess the Lions can't do it.
Yeah, Kevin mentioned something. You called Jared Goff underrated, and even in a down year for the Lions, this guy still threw for 4,500 yards last year. How do you react to that? Is he underrated?
Underrated because of what Kev said, and I got to give him a lot of credit. It's because Sean McVay decided to get off of him. Like, there are 16, 17 teams that would kill to have Jared Goff right now in the NFL. And he's played at a high enough level that we see. The one thing I don't think happens for Jared Goff, the criticism is not as strong when he doesn't perform. That's another, I think, so it's kind of like that guy that's like in the room, and we know he's solid, but when he mess up, everybody like, it don't really matter that much.
Well, probably because he was discarded at one point. So
and
you kind of say, okay.
It may have given him a little bit of freedom to fly under the radar when it's bad. but you can win. Like, we all sitting here at this desk would be lying if we didn't think you could win a championship with Jared Goff playing at a high level.
I mean, they got to a Super Bowl with him in
Yeah.
They did. And if they were healthy, to your point, 2 years ago, I think they would have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they were there.
Yeah.
They were there.
Is he underrated in your eyes?
No, he's
properly rated.
Well, he's America's underdog. Like, I think because of what you just mentioned, because anybody who's discarded. I mean, Jalen Hurts had that in college when it happened at Alabama.
Yes.
Anyone who's kind of put to the side, we go, wait a minute, you kind of root for that dude.
Yeah.
And Jared Goff is an easy guy to root for. But I feel like we don't attach it to results enough.
We don't.
I think most people see Jared Goff and think he's a top 10-ish quarterback, if you polled most people. But where are the results? We just talked about Joe Burrow having to show up and get it done. We've been talking about Kyler Murray. If you're an elite quarterback, get it done. Every other quarterback, we put that on their shoulders. With Jared Goff, we say, well, wait a minute. Here are the 8 things that have to happen for him to win the division and get to a Super Bowl.
Thank you for saying that. All right, because this takes me into another conversation that I've been watching about Jalen Hurts. We talked about this earlier. Like, we in media, and we know that markets matter, and we know that the tone and the narrative in which we talk about guys is based on historical context with their franchise and organization, things that have transpired. Nobody expects anything from Detroit. I'm excited for the Detroit Lions because they asserted themselves into the conversation of being one of the better teams. But Detroit had been down for so long, I still think they get a buffer for not being, for their mistakes. I've watched all summer long Jalen Hurts out of Philly if he don't play well. A Super Bowl MVP.
Yep.
And could have been one in another Super Bowl had it not been for just bad circumstances at the end of a football game. I have a huge problem with this. We talk about Justin Herbert like he's God's gift to playing quarterback.
Speak on it.
And ain't won nothing. Zero. And I get it. Offensive line problems, but guess what else? Jared Goff has lost offensive line. He don't get that criticism. Jalen Hurts played without 3 of them. Last year.
He's had a different offensive coordinator every year.
I'm just bringing this back home for the narrative. It's because of the market.
Yes.
It's because of Detroit. And Dan Campbell takes a lot of the brunt off of all of his players. But Jared Goff going to have to be held to that standard, especially in a division where quarterback play is probably going to be the separator.
Yeah, it's funny how we move the goalposts for certain quarterbacks because you mentioned with Goff, third offensive coordinator in 3 years, and doesn't have a starting center right now due to injury. All right, we'll leave this one here. Straight ahead, I know it's only the preseason, but that won't stop.
Someone just called Dan Campbell an absolute genius. And that changes the entire conversation about Detroit. Campbell's aggression isn't about being a tough guy. His fourth down decisions come from what he learned working under Sean Payton, understanding the fear created when a coach refuses to play conservatively. And Detroit has the talent to justify that confidence. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Aiden Hutchinson, Penei Sewell. This is still a blue-chip roster. The window isn't closed. It's wide open. But talent means nothing if the most important pieces cannot stay on the field. And this is where Detroit gets nervous. Cade Mays is dealing with a wrist injury, while Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph remain major health concerns. That matters because Detroit already learned the hard way what injuries can do. Aiden Hutchinson missed time, the secondary was battered, the Lions were forced to constantly reshuffle. And yet, they kept competing. That's why the argument isn't that Detroit has fallen apart. It's that their margin for error has become much smaller. If Branch and Joseph are healthy, this defense can absolutely make noise. If they aren't, the entire equation changes. And surprisingly, the NFC North may not be as terrifying as everyone wants you to believe. Chicago is dangerous. Green Bay is dangerous. Minnesota is dangerous. But dangerous doesn't mean unbeatable. The Bears went 11-6, yet turnovers and late-game magic helped define their season. Green Bay has tremendous potential, but Jordan Love has dealt with injuries around him. So why are we automatically assuming Detroit cannot compete? The Lions have already proven they can. And they still have the quarterback who has taken a team to a Super Bowl. Which brings us to the biggest debate of all. Jared Goff. Because if everyone else is demanding results from their quarterbacks, why does Goff keep getting a different standard? Goff threw for around 4,500 yards last season, and yet he remains strangely underrated. Maybe it's because Sean McVay moved on from him. Maybe because Goff became the discarded quarterback everyone wanted to root for. But at some point, the underdog story has to disappear. Joe Burrow has to win. Justin Herbert has to win. Jalen Hurts has to win. So Jared Goff has to win too. Detroit has already given him the roster. They've already given him the coach. They've already given him the opportunity. Now, the excuses have to disappear. And that leaves Detroit with one brutally simple question. The Lions are no longer the team nobody expected anything from. They are no longer rebuilding. They are contenders. Dan Campbell believes the window is open. The roster says it's open. The question is whether Detroit can stay healthy long enough and whether Goff can deliver when everything is on the line. Because this time, there are no excuses. The Lions don't need another promising season. They need January football. They need February football. They need the championship. The window isn't closed, but the clock is ticking. And if Detroit stays healthy, the NFC better bring its lunch pail.
Yo, mic check 1 to 2, -1, -2. Game over for this video, folks. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to stay in the huddle for more. This is NFL Madness, bringing the heat and signing out.